Hi, welcome to the second week of the 365-day movie challenge. This week, I have a lot of movies to talk about. I watched 17 films over 1 week, so I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm not going to talk about each and every film. I'm only going to talk about a few of them. Most of them I'm just going to kind of read off on a list and tell you how I saw it. So I'll just kind of get started right away. The first film I watched is a documentary called Shut Up, Little Man. It's a really interesting film. I highly recommend checking it out. It's on Netflix Instant. It's funny and kind of sad at the same time, about two men who get an apartment in the 80s and find out their neighbors are insane, drunken idiots. And it's a weird, odd couple pairing. That's Walt the Wonder Dog making an appearance this week. The next film, also you can find on Netflix Instant, is called Casa de Mi Padre. It's a Will Ferrell film. It's kind of a spoof on Spanish westerns from the 70s-ish. Check it out. It wasn't my kind of film, but, might be yours. I watched Birdemic 2, The Resurrection. I was really, really excited about this film. I really enjoyed watching the first Birdemic. Neither of them are good films, but I had so much fun watching the first film that when I heard there was a second one, I was very, very excited for it. And the second one takes place in Hollywood, which is great. So this film, unfortunately, was quite a bit of a letdown. It was not nearly as fun as the first film. It sort of has the same hammy, over-the-top message. It's very in your face. And unfortunately, you've already heard it, so it doesn't resonate in any way. The acting is, they don't really have a whole lot to work with, so, there's that. Yeah, there's equipment in the background, and you can see the lights, and it's just not what I was hoping for. I don't mind seeing the lights in the background in a film like this, to be honest with you, but it just didn't click this time, unfortunately. So Birdemic 3 would not be something I would look forward to necessarily. Also watched a few other films. Watched another documentary called American Harmony. You can check this out on Netflix Instant. It's a pretty fun film about the International Barbershop Quartet Championship. Another documentary that barely made it on the list because it was just 2 minutes over my limit. In order for it to be considered a feature film for this challenge, it has to be 60 minutes or longer. This was 1 hour, 1 minute. So had it been 2 minutes shorter, it would not have made it. So it's a documentary called I Think We're Alone Now, and it's about people who obsess over the 80s pop singer Tiffany. It's weird. It gives you a new look at what you would consider a stalker. I use air quotes because I think if you thought about what the definition of what you thought a stalker was, and then you learned about these people and sort of why they were called stalkers, they're definitely obsessive, but why they were called stalkers, I don't know, you might have a different take on it. A different sympathy for these people. So, check it out. It's pretty interesting. I watched a Scott Baio film called Zapped. I'd never seen it before. It's an 80s film. Kind of 80s typical, hey, it's definitely done in the 80s and there's definitely boobs in it. So, yeah, that's pretty much Zapped. Then we moved on to AFI Fest has started. We're roughly 5 days in. So I have several films from the festival to talk about. The first one was an opening night film called Saving Mr. Banks, and it tells the story of how Walt Disney was able to get the rights to make the film Mary Poppins. The author, P.L. Travers, was an obstinate woman who was so attached to these characters and the story, she didn't want to just let anybody make the film. She didn't want anyone to make the film, to be honest, it seemed like. And she did so more because of her financial situation. And, I think the Disney company sort of proved themselves worthy and proved that they could do something that she didn't think could happen, which is pay real respect to the story and the characters. This film comes out in December, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's a warm and fuzzy movie, which is kind of my favorite. It's not really a genre, but I'll call it a genre. It's my favorite genre, warm and fuzzy. Something that's dramatic, that has some funny moments, and that leaves you feeling complete and happy at the end. That's my definition of a great film. So I definitely would check out Saving Mr. Banks. You'll recognize all the music, and it had a great score that was written by Thomas Newman. It's a very good film. Next up, we saw Pickpocket, which is an older French film, black and white, about a man who's sort of fallen into becoming a pickpocket, not out of desperation, but out of desire and a sort of a need to do it. It's interesting. It's got some really great moments. It's not really my kind of film. I like a movie where there's a lot more emotion being evoked from the characters instead of just line delivery. I'm not into just saying the lines. I want people to sort of feel the lines. So I'm not really my cup of tea, but I'm glad I saw it. Next we had a film called The Rocket, which is an Australian film, but you wouldn't know it was Australian. It's a film that was all shot in Laos with an all Laotian cast. All of the dialogue is in Lao. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It's going to be Australia's submission for Best Foreign Film for the Oscars this year, so I'm sure you'll get a chance to see it in some way. Probably at least be in an art house cinema near you. Definitely check it out. It's a very good film. Follows this family. The little boy in the family is considered to be cursed, and most of the movie it seems like he is. And he is sort of leading them. Well, they're being led on this journey to find a new home after they're sort of evicted from their village, and it sort of culminates to this rocket festival where they decide whether or not they're going to enter this rocket festival to try to win some money. It's a really fun film. The cast is very good, and it's emotional, and again, it's a little bit of one of those warm and fuzzies. It's got some hard moments to watch, some sad things, but overall, it's a very good film. The next film is called Congratulations. It's an absurdist comedy about a cop who goes to live with a family because their little boy is missing. They're sort of afraid that he's been taken. The cop believes the little boy's still inside the house. It's not quite the story I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit like Police Squad or The Naked Gun, where those shows were sort of based on the Dragnet type police shows, where everyone is kind of stone-faced and just the facts and very proper. Whereas this one is the same style as Naked Gun with like Leslie Nielsen, but it's today's cop shows that they're sort of poking fun at. The CSI and CIS, Law and Order, where everybody is kind of mysterious and a little darker, and their methods are a little different, and everybody whispers. So, it was a little too long. The first half is much funnier than the second half. The second half just drags on and on and on and on. Not a film I would probably, recommend to people or tell people to rush out and go see. We saw another film after that, though, that was kind of amazing. It's called Big Bad Wolves. It's an Israeli film. It's probably going to get a wide release in January. It was picked up by Magnet Films. That means it's probably going to hit theaters and video on demand pretty close to each other, if not at the same time. At least that's sort of a pattern with them. This is like I said, it's an Israeli film, all spoken in Hebrew. It's a horror film that leans a little more towards thriller. It's not incredibly graphic, but it is a fantastic story. It is beautifully shot. The acting is great. The chemistry between the characters and the actors is amazing. It follows two cops, one retired, one current cop, who are convinced that they have captured the man who has been abducting and killing little girls. And they proceed to torture him to try to get information from him. It's got some twists in it, some things you may or may not see coming. It's got some great fairy tale imagery and subtext to it that I really liked. It kind of makes me want to go back and look for more. It's very funny. It's one of those movies that they kind of want you to laugh, because there's some twisted things, and there's sort of some things that sometimes laughter is the only way you can process things that you see. And so they sort of evoke that out of you. So highly, highly recommend Big Bad Wolves. Please see it. Next up was a film called Little Black Spiders about pregnant teens in Belgium in the 1970s. It's based on a true story. These teens are hidden up in the attic or the top floor of this hospital. It's not an attic. It's really just the top floor of this hospital that's run by nuns, and it's sort of about friendship and bonding while they're waiting for their kids to be born. And it's also sort of about naivete and trust, and trying to figure out what's best for your children. So it's definitely tough to watch at times. It's maybe a little artsy at moments for its own good. It's not going to translate. It's not going to be palatable to everybody. So it's worth checking out, but it's probably one of those where half your friends are going to like it, and half of them are probably just not going to get it. There's another film we saw called Charlie Victor Romeo. I really, really enjoyed this film. It was really interesting. It's a play in New York that you can see. They decided to do a multi-camera shoot, so you're seeing it from different angles instead of just the angle you would see during the play. They shot it in 3D, even though there's only 6 feet of depth on the set. But it's really interesting because it's all of the dialogue and the situations are taken from transcripts of black box recordings from air disasters. So you're watching the moments that lead up to, let's say, a plane crash, and it's all true. They can't listen to the black box recordings because the NTSB doesn't release those things to the public, not in the U.S. at least. So all of these people are sort of doing their own interpretations of it, and it's sort of them doing it, which is nice. The 3D, I think, is done just to give you a slight feeling like you're actually watching the play. When you go and see a play on Broadway, everything is over the top, but you're there, so you're sort of part of it, so you buy into the over the top aspect of it. When you put a camera up and record a play, there's a disconnect, and oftentimes the over-the-top feeling doesn't go away. It just feels over the top the whole time. And I think by making it 3D, you get a little bit of a feeling of being there, and that over-the-top feeling is you get used to it pretty quickly, and I think that it helps you get into the film a little bit better and identify with the characters. The people portrayed, they did it with a lot of respect, and it was a really, really interesting story that they told. It's not a full circle beginning to end thing. It's just these segments where it's different air disasters, but it was really interesting. And if you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. Probably a little bit better if you can see it in 3D. Next film was called Gabrielle. It's a fantastic film shot in Montreal. I'm hoping it's Canada's film for Best Picture, Best Foreign Film. It tells the story of a young woman with Williams syndrome, which is leads her to be, I guess you'd say maybe mentally handicapped. She's a little bit slower. She's in a choir with other people with similar situations where they either have Down syndrome or Asperger's, or they're either physically or emotionally or mentally handicapped in some way, and they all have this sort of bond in this choir, and the choir is going to be singing this big event with a famous French singer and our Canadian singer, French Canadian, yeah. And the main character Gabrielle falls in love with one of the other young men in the choir, and the families aren't really sure if they're capable of having a real relationship and whether they should have a real relationship and whether they can handle it. And it's sort of about them sort of fighting for their relationship at 22 years old. It's kind of frustrating at times, but it's very, very funny, and it's incredibly sweet. And I really, really, really enjoyed this film. We fortunately got to meet Gabrielle after the film, and her smile just lights your heart up. She's a beautiful young woman who you connect with immediately and fall in love with. So definitely check out Gabrielle when you can. We watched an Iranian film called Omar, about a group of rebels sort of fighting they're fighting against oppression, and it leads to someone murdering a soldier and the police trying to figure out who that is, and it sort of follows three men, and there is a traitor amongst them, and there's also this beautiful young woman who's sort of related to all of these three men. She's the sister of one of them, and she's the love interest or being courted by the other two men. And there's some betrayal and intrigue and action and drama, and it's I didn't expect to like it, but I actually really, really liked this film. I thought it was very good, and it's something definitely worth checking out. It's not going to end probably the way you want it to end, but it's fun nonetheless. Then we saw a great Indian film called The Lunchbox. Highly recommend it. You're going to see it. It was Sundance is attached to it, so you're going to see it at some point, whether it's on Netflix or in Redbox or in the theater. Definitely check this film out. It's about this woman who is feeling this disconnect with her husband, so she starts investing herself in the lunches that she makes for him. So she makes these lunches up, and then she sends them through the courier service. The courier service in India is very, very famous. These men have this system that's supposed to never fail, and it's quite an ordeal. Somebody picks it up from your home, and then they tie it to a motorcycle or a bike, and then they go to the train station and they load them in these carts, and then they put the carts on their heads and they walk them to the train, and they put them on the train, and they go somewhere, and then they get them off the train, and they put them on a different train, and then that train goes somewhere, and they get them off, and then they deliver them. It's just a crazy situation, a big ordeal, and unfortunately, or fortunately, the lunchbox goes to the wrong person for what they act like is the first time, or they don't acknowledge that it happened. And this man eats the lunch and sends it back, and she thinks, oh, great, my husband ate all the food. And it turns out, she finds out that he didn't eat it. So when she makes the next lunch, she leaves a note in there. And, of course, the wrong man gets it again, and he reads the note. And they begin to have a relationship on paper, just passing these notes back and forth every day through this lunch. And she continues to make lunches for him, of course, because he appreciates it and enjoys the food and eats all of it. It's a really unique film. It's very funny. The actors are fantastic in it. It's shot really well. It's very pretty, and it's a nice story about self-respect and self-worth, and moving on from heartbreak, and it's a very unique film, and I really recommend it. So check out The Lunchbox. Last film I have for you is called The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. It's a film from the 60s. It's directed by Jacques Remy. It's a very pretty film. I love the way it's shot. I really love the set design, like the wallpaper and the paint, and everything's just very, very pretty. And the performances are very good. The trick for most people is the movie is all of the dialogue is sung, so it's all music all the time. It's kind of an opera in that way. I kind of consider it a little bit experimental because you don't see a lot of films like this, and a lot of people can't handle that. I mean, it's like they want to hear people singing, they want to hear it rhyme, and they want to hear like kind of poetic prose to it, and this is like people singing all of their dialogue. You know, a little bit like Les Miserables, they did that, but whereas that was very orchestrated and everything is, you know, very, very specific, this is like to jazz music and to, you know, other types of score. It's a little bit different. I do recommend it, though. It's something that I feel like people should see. It's a story you've seen probably before. You know, these two young people are in love, and the young man gets called to war, and they spend one last night together, and of course he goes off to war and she becomes pregnant, and it's sort of about hopes and dreams and whether you can achieve those hopes and dreams, and also sort of about how sometimes you achieve the thing that you want, but you don't do it the way you expect to. Sometimes, you know, you have to take a different route to get to the right place in the end. So definitely check it out. That's pretty much all I have for you. Pretty much all I have for you. It's like a 20-minute video. That's what I have for you this week. I'm sorry it was so much. Next week's probably going to be another really long video where I'm talking about, you know, another 10 or 15 films. This week, I have the awesome Doctor Who E.T. mashup shirt. E.T. is my favorite film of all time. Love Doctor Who. Had to have the shirt. I'll put a link in the description below. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Definitely comment. I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. If you think there's something I should watch, let me know, and I'll maybe give it a shot. Thanks. I'll see you next time. Bon cinema.